I love tigers. When I was a little kid, I used to say the tiger is my favorite animal, and that love for these magnificent creatures has continued into my old age. And although I've watched documentaries, seen them in zoos, read about them, I've never actually seen a tiger in the wild, which is why my wife Ashwita and I are off for a weekend visit to a neighboring national park to see if we can catch a glimpse of a tiger. It's extremely rare, or maybe I just have bad luck. I've never been successful, and neither has she, in seeing a tiger out in the open. But after a very busy and hectic couple of weeks, actually it's been a busy and hectic couple of months, we decided it was time for a little break. However, it's also been a couple of weeks since I made my last video, and that's something I wanted to get to as well. So in an attempt to do both, I'm going to try to make one of those vloggy videos and tenuously connect this trip to comics by taking two items with me. For the first, we're going to head over to shelf 7 and pick up Love the Tiger, the first in the 4 volumes of Love. Each one of these books is a wordless comic story telling the day in the life of an animal. The first volume is the tiger, and since it's unlikely that we're going to catch a glimpse of a real life tiger, I thought it would be a good idea to revisit this intimate comics look. And for the second item, we're going to head over to the bar area and pick up a hip flask. This hip flask was a gift from a friend of mine and shows the cover of Love and Rockets #1 by the Hernandez brothers. I've never used this hip flask before. I don't usually carry alcohol around in my pocket, but I figure we're going to be in the jungle, it's December, we could use some warming up. An empty hip flask is of no use, so first we'll fill this up, pack away the comic and the whiskey, and we're ready to go. Well, we have arrived. It is dark. It is cold. It's a good thing I have this flask. Oh, I could get used to that. Tomorrow morning we'll be off for the first of our 2 safaris, so I thought tonight we could take a first glimpse at Love the Tiger. Written by Frederic Bremaud and illustrated in lush watercolors by Federico Bertolucci. This is a solid hardcover. Very slim at less than 80 pages, including some extras. And it has these rounded corners instead of the usual rectangular ones. Along with the illustration style, this simple, elegant design gives a unique feel to this volume and others in the series. As I briefly mentioned earlier, each of the love stories tells one day in the life of one animal somewhere in the world. This comic is entirely wordless, told entirely in illustration. There's no written language anywhere, not in sound effects, not in roars or animal sounds, and this immediately creates an impression of a different world from ours, very untouched by man. The most standout thing is obviously the art style done in these watercolors, in these panels which aren't bordered though, it's just the colors that make up the straight edges. This makes them feel like paintings but also a moving comic, especially in these action sequences like that of the tiger chasing this tapir. Actually, when I first read this comic, I did not know that the tapir is native to India as well. I thought it was a South American animal, but the Malay or Indian tapir is accurately presented here as part of the jungles of India, which is where this tiger is. The lush colors and details are helped by superb panel work, which really give you a sense of cinematic movement as well as presentation of the environment. I don't think in our safari tomorrow we're going to have anywhere as verdant a landscape as we see here. I'm also not expecting to get a close view of a crocodile going up against the tiger, and especially not with angles and points of view such as these. The early pages of this book showing the failed chase of the tapir and then this fight with the crocodile are very action-packed, but even in these, I think the couple of underwater sequences that you have of the crocodile with the camera, as it were, looking up are my favorites. There's also a glimpse of these piranha-looking fish, although that's one thing I'm still not sure about. I don't know if we have piranhas in the rivers of India. I certainly haven't heard of them. And this comic, although about the tiger, does have so many other animals and creatures and interactions taking place on the sidelines that they add another level of menace and teeth in this jungle. Then we get to this superb sequence of the tiger looking up into the trees and into a full page panel of monkeys. Monkeys certainly are native to these parts. They're all over the place around here. Even walking up to the hotel room, we ran across a dozen of them. But this particular illustration still makes them more primal and menacing than I'm used to. So that's a brief taste of this book. We'll continue further after our first safari tomorrow, where I'm not expecting to see a tiger or a crocodile or a tapir for that matter. I'm sure we'll get to see monkeys, but let's see what else we can find. So good night for now, and I'll see you in the morning. Almost time for our first safari. We're going to grab a quick breakfast. It's a nice chilly morning, but I think perhaps a little too early for the hip flask. Let's get out there and see what we can find. It's even colder tonight, which I think warrants a double swig from the Love and Rockets hip flask. And that was a pretty good safari today. As predicted, we didn't see a tiger or a tapir, although we saw a river where people often see crocodiles, so they're not that uncommon, but no crocodiles either. But we did get to see plenty of monkeys. We saw some deer. There was a wild boar that I don't think I was able to capture with this camera. And it was a great experience just being out there in the forest. The most impressive thing is the silence, although silence isn't quite the right word. There's plenty of sound in the jungle. It's just you're not talking and people around you are not talking if you're on the right kind of safari. So it's a lot of the sounds of the jungle, which did connect to the comic. While the comic has no words or written language, it definitely features sound. You just have to create it for yourself, whether it's the roaring of the tiger or the breaking of a branch. And in many ways, it's far more effective to have no writing and to just be creating the sound rather than to have something like roar or war, cheek. For something like this, although dramatized, like with these monkeys attacking this tiger and the tiger half climbing up a tree in an attempt to get to them, although dramatic, it's still put forward in a sort of nature documentary sort of way. So not having things that are exclusively human, like written words, and going more for image and the implication of sound and the literal spelling it out, demonstrates the unique power of comics, like making you hear the hissing of these snakes without any other indication. We didn't see any king cobras either. The interesting balance in this book is that narrative versus documentary thing. Because it's one day in the life of, like anything that is one day in the life of, it has to be representative. So there's a lot packed into it. You get a lot of variety, you get a lot of dramatic situations, and there may be certain sections that feel very natural, like this page over here, and certain parts can feel a little bit more cartoony, like this one where the tiger steps on a nest of ants. But you're not going to mistake this for an anthropomorphized tiger or a human-like tiger. This book and others in the Love series remind me of Richard Delgado's classic Age of Reptiles, which is about dinosaurs, which also takes a wordless and very naturalistic approach to showing you a world of prey and predators. But these books do put a little bit more of an arc or a narrative within that one day for these animals. It doesn't detract from the reading. In fact, this is one of the unique things about comics. You can have something like Uncle Scrooge or Usagi Yojimbo that are completely humanized animals. You can have things like Age of Reptiles, which are very documentary-like in their approach. And you can have very interesting hybrids like this one. We're going to put this aside for tonight because we have a very early morning tomorrow for our second and final safari. So once again, good night, and I'll see you in the morning. It is the morning of the second safari and our second attempt at seeing a tiger. It is even earlier and colder than it was yesterday, which is really not something I've associated with tiger environments. They usually tend to be warm and hot and muggy, not so cold. But if that's what we have to put up with in a chance to see a tiger, that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to finish up my coffee and then we're on our way. I think we're about halfway through this safari. No tiger yet, but it is a lovely morning. Now that it's warming up a little bit more, I don't think I need this very fashionable scarf that my wife insisted on lending me. Although not as tropical and muggy as we were talking about the forests in comics and movies being, there is something very beautiful about this misty green forest stuff over here. Both yesterday and today we've seen a lot of different kinds of animals, and it's just beautiful being out here. But I wouldn't mind getting a sighted tiger. Onward for the second part. Well, we just got back from our second safari, and although we didn't see as many animals as we did yesterday, we did catch a glimpse of a tiger. It was way off in the distance, a tiny little orange speck in a larger yellow grass thing. I mean, we didn't even think it was a tiger for the first until it moved a little, and then after a while, it just went completely camouflaged. It was fantastic. So, a success, which means the night's drink is a toast to the tiger. And that was terrific. Even that tiny little speck is a peek into a world that we don't usually see, which is what makes a good nature documentary so good. That lifting of that curtain. A comic like Love and an experience like the safari are quite far apart on the spectrum. One is a close-up and dramatized look that frankly doesn't exist in real life and needs the imagination to manufacture it. And on the other hand, you have absolute reality, which is very elusive, very rare, but completely transportive and inspiring works like this. I love this book and the others in the series. They're very elegant, beautifully made, but also very straightforward. At the beginning of each book has the same paragraph, which says, "In the animal kingdoms, animals neither love nor hate one another. Love and hate are parts of a natural whole, a supreme balance many consider to be universal or even divine, an elemental love, a love that mankind could never experience." Which I suppose is one way of interpreting love, but this idea of a completely different kind of relationship of eat or be eaten, and every creature's survival being at risk at every minute, whether it's a monkey being eaten by a python or a bird's nest being destroyed by a stampeding elephant, and that closed focus and fully realized look into this world is really what these slim little albums are all about. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different kind of video. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of it. This has been For the Love of Comics. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.